Space Marines are the most commonly played army in Warhammer 40k. Their unit variety, rules, and synergies all make them a fantastic starter army, but they also offer a lot for experienced players to explore as well. One of my earlier videos was ranking every Space Marine vehicle, and I said I'd do every infantry unit if that did well, which it did. So today we're going to be doing that and ranking every single Astartes infantry unit from S tier to F tier, and mentioning a little bit about how I use them in my own lists. This is going to be a long one, so let's get right into it. Welcome back to Starhammer. Before we start, I want to make it very clear that I'm only going to be reviewing units that any Space Marine army can use. That means no Primaris Crusader squads or Deathwing Terminators or anything like that. I do have videos about Black Templar lists and stuff if that's more your thing, but you can go check out my channel for those. Kicking us off is going to be our Assault Intercessors, which you can run in 5 or 10 man squads for 75 and 150 points respectively. They've got the same stat block as any other Space Marine, which is this right here. If there are any significant changes to this stat block, I'll be sure to mention it and put it on screen, but otherwise assume all Space Marines have these same stats. Anyway, they're nothing too crazy. Their Sergeant is able to swap out his Chainsword for a Power Weapon, Thunder Hammer, or Power Fist, and his pistol for a Hand Flame or Plasma Pistol, but everyone's back in Heavy Bolt Pistols and Chainswords otherwise. Their Shock Assault ability allows you to re-roll wound rolls of 1 or the entire wound roll if the target's on an objective marker and you're swinging in melee. Pretty cut and dry, not a lot to talk about with these guys. I run them every so often, and if you pair them with Transport to get them to a point quickly, they can actually be pretty handy. That said, they do have very limited range being a melee unit, but swinging with 36 Chainsword attacks, assuming your Sergeant is running a power weapon, with the option of rerolls is pretty freaking sweet and can rip through other Space Marines or similarly statted units. I'm going to put these guys in the B tier. Heavy Intercessors are actually a favorite shooting unit of mine that can be ran in squads of 5 to 10 for 110 to 220 points. I know that sounds like a lot, but you'll notice they're a bit more tanky than regular Space Marines with their Gravis armor. They move a little slower but are at a toughness 6 as opposed to 4 with 3 wounds instead of 2. They've got significant range on their heavy bolt rifles, allowing you to sit these guys in cover on your home objective and provide support for units in the midfield. They've got Assault and Heavy, giving you a +1 to hit if you don't move them, or the option to advance and fire if you want to play a little bit more aggressively. For every 5 models in the unit, one of them can back a Heavy Bolter, giving you Sustained 1 and an extra attack. Their ability, Unyielding in the Face of the Foe, allows them to add 1 to their save against damage 1 attacks that target them while they sit on an objective you control. A bit specific, but that's the case with a lot of regular infantry guns that get shot their way. But hey, if it can give you a 2-up save, it's pretty darn nice. I really like to sit these guys on my back points. They can provide fire support for melee units trying to take the midfield. They're pretty tough, have a lot of range, and are great at securing a home objective while you worry about other things. They are relatively slow, but if you want them on the front line, a decent advance roll should get you in a good spot for cover and within range. They also work very well with the Anvil Siege Attachment rule, letting you add 1 to the wound roll for remaining stationary that turn. I'm going to slap these guys in the A tier. Regular Intercessors are a good unit to pad out a list with, but also just a decent battle line unit in general. Back to standard Space Marine stats, but you can run them in squads of 5 or 10 for 80 or 160 points. They're all pack and bolt rifles and pistols, with the rifles getting Assault and Heavy just like the previous unit. There's also the option to give them a grenade launcher to deal with bricks for every 5 models in the unit. Sergeant can have his close combat weapon replaced with either a Power Fist, Sword, Thunder Hammer, or Chainsword, as well as replacing his bolt rifle with a plasma pistol, power weapon, chainsword, or hand flamer. These guys actually have 2 abilities. Objective Secured gives you sticky objectives, meaning you can have a point remain under your control, provided this unit is on it during your command phase, and allow you to free them up to pursue other goals. Target Elimination can kick in every time they shoot. If they use this, you get an extra 2 attacks for each bolt rifle shooting. Keep in mind, you won't be able to split fire when doing so. Intercessors are pretty nifty to pad a list out with for some points, but they can also do quite a bit for their low cost. They excel at letting you focus on combat by giving you stickies, and they're not half bad against similarly strong enemy units, especially with that target elimination ability. Pretty well-rounded unit, but nothing too special. B tier it is. Tactical Squads are a unit I don't often find on the tabletop, but they pay homage to the Firstborn Marines of past editions. They only come in squads of 10 for 140 points, and are your jack-of-all-trades unit with a plethora of weapons at their disposal. One Tactical Marine can pack any of these fancy guns, and another can also pack some heavy heat, but only these 4 here. The Sergeant can replace his bolt pistol and rifle with twin lightning claws or 2 ranged weapons from this list, provided one of those weapons is a pistol. You've got a lot of options here, and you can tailor the squad for a specific role. Whether it's light AT or anti-infantry, you got a tool for the job. Their Combat Squad's ability lets you split this unit into 2 5-man squads, and allow you to get a little more coverage from your heavy weapons by declaring so at the start of the game. This is a really cool unit, but honestly, I like the specialist squads the Primaris Marines introduced more. I'm sure that's going to get me some Redditors in the comments that are going to want to egg my house for saying that, but I'm sticking to those guns. You're going to get more bang for your buck out of a dedicated AT or heavy weapon squad, but the option to give regular infantry troops such oomph at low cost also isn't a bad thing, and you can still throw some pain down range with these guys. Targets you might not otherwise be able to affect as a regular infantry unit, especially for the points cost. Tactical squad is a solid B tier. Now we're getting into the other units category. I'm starting off with Aggressor squads, which you can run in squads of 3 or 6 for 120 or 240 points. Slightly tankier than your average Marine, these guys are also a little slower, but only have a few options for weapons. They come with a Flamestorm Gauntlet by default, which aren't half bad at all with these 6+1 attacks that ignore cover, but you can swap out all of them for either Bolt Storm Gauntlets or Frag Launchers. You're getting twin linked on guns that aren't frag launchers, and with the flamers that can prove invaluable since you aren't rolling to hit anyway. I'm also going to point out that their melee weapons of the twin power fists, which also come with the twin link keyword. Their ability close quarters firepower allows them to add 1 to AP when shooting the closest eligible target. This procs really well off the Firestorm Assault attachment, which gives all ranged weapons assault and an extra 1 to strength when shooting at a target within 12 inches. If you're a Salamanders player, you've probably got a few of these guys in your list. They're a fairly tough CQC unit, but for 240 points, that seems like a lot. I feel like you could accomplish more with a Dreadnought for around the same points. Certainly wouldn't be a bad unit to camp out on a point, don't get me wrong, but that might not be my first pick. Not great, not terrible, very average, C tier for these fellas. Up next we have the Assault Intercessors with jump packs. These are regular ass Marines that move at 12 inches instead of 6 and have the ability to deep strike. You can take them in teams of 5 or 10 for 90 or 160 points. The weapon options are short and sweet. Most of them are running chainswords and heavy bolt pistols, but your sergeant can replace his chainsword with a power fist or power weapon, and his pistol with a plasma or hand flamer. For every 5 models in the unit, one of your normal guys can have a plasma pistol instead of a bolt pistol. These guys throw down a lot of attacks in melee, 19 to be exact if you run chainswords and the power fist. Chainswords are chainswords, but these guys will chew through units of cultists or Zangors and often fare well against other Space Marine units as well. The draw to them is their Hammer of Wrath ability. Let you roll a d6 for each enemy model within engagement range after a charge and dish out a mortal wound on each 4 up to a max of 6 mortal wounds. Ideally, you'll play these guys extremely aggressively. Charge someone, do mortals and swing, force them to fall back, and then get them again on your next turn if able. But outside of Hammer of Wrath, there's not a ton to note about them. They're interesting, but I think more of a fun, personal choice as opposed to one that's actually viable. Don't get me wrong, they're alright for their points and what they can do, but if you're not making your charges, they're downright useless. That said, I have killed a couple Catan shards with these guys, and I take them in most of my Black Templar lists. In part because of how cheap they are, but also just because of how fun they are. Another resident for the C tier, I think. Onto the Bladeguard Veterans. Mostly average Space Marines, but with a 4-up invuln save and 3 wounds instead of 2, you can run them in squads of 3 or 6 for 80 or 160 points. Attack and bolt pistols and power swords and shields, except for your sergeant, who can get a Volkite pistol with dev wounds if you so choose. Their ability is pretty sweet, as it allows you to pick an option at the start of any fight phase. You can either reroll failed invuln saves of 1 or hit rolls of 1 for your melee attacks, and it lasts for the whole phase. I run 2 squads of these guys in most of my lists because they are an excellent defensive unit with that 4-up invuln, and if in a Templar list or another army that gets melee buffs, these guys are downright scary on the board. That said, your ranged options are limited, but that's not why you take them. Pair these guys with a Chaplain or a Judicar and you can give them +1 to wound or fights first. Both are great options and a hard decision to make. A killer unit that can tank large amounts of damage with their shields and dish out large amounts in melee with 24 attacks at strength 5, AP and damage 2 in a full squad. They are great against tougher infantry like Necron and Mortals and a fine addition to any list, especially more range oriented ones that need some melee teeth. For all that, we're going to put the Bladeguard up in the A tier. Centurions are probably the goofiest Space Marine model that's out there, and we've got 2 versions of them to pick from, Assault Squad and Devastator Squad. You can run the Assault Squad in teams of 3 or 6 for 150 or 300 points. I know that's a lot, but we'll get to why in a second. Their stats are just as buff as their models, and their weapon loadouts are pretty limited. Any or all of them can have their flamers replaced with twin-linked meltas and their bolters with an assault launcher. I don't think the assault launchers are a thing anymore, as it seems to be a warrior ability that just gives the grenades keyword. Let me know if I'm wrong, maybe that was different in past editions. Perhaps the most impressive tool are the siege drills they have for melee weapons. These are twin-linked, stats on them are pretty darn impressive. Their ability Annihilator Protocols plays into it by giving these things sustain 2 in melee against monsters, vehicles, and fortification. Honestly, these would probably be some great melee AT if you're running a melee heavy list. I've never used these guys, but if you were to combine that ability with a Templar Vow giving lethals or another sustained 1, I could see how they would hurt. The downside is they are tremendously slow, which makes sense if you just look at them. They're super tough, and I could see them making a very good camp unit that would dare your opponents to try and get in close. These could be a very useful unit with their stats in melee and in general. With their slow speed, it makes it very difficult, in my mind, to justify the points. Plus, smarter enemies will just sit back and snipe these guys off a point with last cannons or something like that. These ones are a solid D tier. Centurion Devastators are a little bit more useful. Same stats as before, but now you've got some range shooting variety. Any of their bolters can be swapped with missile launchers, and their grav cannons can be swapped for either heavy bolter or las cannon. Not bad, especially when you factor in all these keywords. Grav cannons are anti-vehicle 2 up with 3 attacks, 1 AP and 3 damage, and 3 attacks, potentially allowing you to bring down vehicles very quickly. Their other guns in melee are also solid against some harder targets and tougher infantry like themselves. You got a lot of options here on how to play them. Do you want to go more anti-tank / monster with the grav cannons and las cannons, or more about anti-infantry with the bolters? At 165 for 3 models and a whopping 330 for 6, I think that's a pretty balanced points cost for the potential these guys have for killing power. It's only boosted by their ability. Decimator protocols allow you to reroll hit rolls of 1 or the entire hit roll if the target is within range of an objective marker. Take that with all your keywords and Anvil Siege Force to grant that heavy bonus and the 1 to wound if remaining stationary. The potential lethality here comes from all the keyword bonuses, detachment rule, and their ability, making these guys a killer force on the board against any target. Stack the Decimator protocols with Oath of Moment to reroll your 1s and then everything else with Oath of Moment against targets not on a point, and you'll come out on top. They do suffer from the same slow speed stat, but honestly, who cares? This is an even more effective point holder than the assault guys, and given all their goodies, I'm plopping them in the C tier. They're not a meta pick at all, but we don't like the meta here. We're all about fun. But I do think that given their high points cost, that does knock them down the list a little. Now we got Company Heroes coming in at 105 points for 4 models. These dudes have standard Space Marine stats and unlike everyone else, set loadouts, which you can see here. These can't be changed and there's nothing too special about them, though the keywords are nice. I'm not sure why the Ancient gets the worst loadout of the bunch, but whatever. Their abilities are Astartes Banner, giving you an extra point of OC so long as the Ancient's in the squad, and Command Squad allows you to subtract 1 from the wound roll of incoming attacks. The melee potential is okay, I guess. Pretty nice attack pool with the Mastercraft power weapons and those chew through most regular infantry. Put a Templar Vow on these guys and an LT for lethal hits, and the ability to shoot and declare a charge after falling back, and they're an okay melee unit that can maybe throw down some hate in the midfield. Problem is, can't really attach the characters to these guys, and they don't do a whole lot. They're okay, but I think your points are better spent elsewhere. These guys are going in the F tier. Up next, we got the Desolation Squad at 200 for a squad of 5. It's a lot of points, but given how these guys are kitted out with Super Frag or Crack launchers, Castellan launchers, and the choice of a Vanguard launcher that can all ignore cover if remaining stationary thanks to their targeter optics ability, I think 200 is a valid cost for them. They have standard Space Marine stats, and their weapons can tackle a variety of foes. From the infantry annihilating frag launchers to the monster killing crack launchers, there's a nice buffet of choices for you to make depending on the game you're playing. This unit pairs very well with Anvil Siege, as the bonuses for remaining stationary not only let you add 1 to hit and wound, but also ignore cover. No pesky enemy dreadnought is going to be safe, I can tell you that. These guys aren't a bad unit. Prior to the indirect fire nerf, could be absolutely devastating to infantry, as they would function like a high-end mortar team. Picking them is more fun than practical. You can get more wounds, mobility, and lethality from a Redemptor Dread for only 10 points extra, but the Desolation Squad is still a solid unit, provided you can get them to a nice vantage point and cover where they can blast away to their heart's content. A fun little squad, they're going in the B tier. The Devastator Squad is kind of like the Tactical Squad from earlier, but better. Coming in at 120 for 5 or 200 for 10, these Marines live up to their name. They got the usual Space Marine stats, and up to 4 dudes can have their bolt gun replaced with any of these options, and the Sergeant replaces his bolt pistol and bolt gun with either 2 ranged options or 1 melee and 1 range. Note that you can only run 2 ranged options with them if one of them is also a pistol. Stats on these guns are keyword heaven, and you got something to tackle everything from infantry to dreadnoughts with all those keywords. Their abilities are alright, with Signum allowing your guns to ignore cover provided you remain stationary, activated in your movement phase, so remember that. Their other is Armorium Cherub, which allows you to change the result of a single hit roll to a 6 once per battle. These guys are really well rounded, as you can see. You can kit them out to tackle pretty much any challenge you come across, and their points are very affordable for such a buffet of powerful weapon options. But their abilities really bite them in the ass, in my opinion. Having ignore cover is nice, but I'd happily swap that out for sustained or something else. Considering a lot of these guns only have 1 or 2 shots, the more chances I have to wound something, the better. I guess you could argue ignore cover could improve the wound chance in of itself, and it would, but something like lethals or sustained would be more utilitarian. I like these guys, but their abilities are fairly lacking to me. I'm torn on where to put them, but for this video, I guess I'll put them in the B tier, primarily because their abilities don't offer a ton of utility on the field. Next, we got Eliminators coming in at 3 for 85. These are regular ass Space Marines, but they're also your go-to sniper unit. All of them are rocking precision weapons, with bolt snipers being the default, but having the option to give everyone a las fusel for some extra punch, or swapping the sergeant's stuff for an instigator bolt carbine. They've got stealth and infiltrator, which is pretty badass. For those who don't know, stealth means that any ranged attacks made against them take a -1 to hit, and infiltrator allows you to set them up anywhere on the battlefield during deployment that's 9 inches away from all enemy models in their DZ, which should be pretty easy to do in most games. Their abilities are pretty darn cool. Repositioning under fire allows you to make a normal move after shooting, as long as your sergeant is equipped with a carbine, but it takes away your ability to charge that turn. Not that you should be doing that with these guys anyway. Mark the target gives your ranged attacks dev wounds if you remain stationary. I really like Eliminators, especially someone who plays against character-heavy armies quite a bit. They can easily give you an early advantage if you can infiltrate them into a position that can snipe enemy leaders in the first turn, and their ability lets them potentially move twice in a turn, but if I were you, I'd try to take advantage of those dev wounds as much as possible. Not a lot of characters are going to have the feeling of pain to shrug those off, and usually you only need 2 or 3 shots to wound to bring someone down. Eliminators are a top tier unit that can swiftly change the way a battle plays out. For how cheap they are, I can't recommend them enough. They're going to be our first S tier unit. Moving on to another favorite of mine, the Eradicators. Coming in at 100 for 3 or 200 for 6. These guys have rarely let me down, and I run them in just about every list. These guys are on Gravis armor, so they're slightly tankier and slower than regular Marines, as you can see here, but with these stats, able to help them withstand a lot of punishment. That's ideal, because as you can see, your guns are very short range. For every 3 models in the unit, one of them can have their melta rifle replaced with a multi-melta. You might be thinking, geez Colin, that's a very small attack pool with very inconsistent damage for 200 points. Normally I'd agree with you. I'm not a huge fan of casino dice either, but the Eradicators have this amazing ability called Total Obliteration. With this ability, anytime you attack a monster or vehicle, you get to reroll everything. So your potential for wounds goes significantly higher. I tend to use these guys in an AT role, obviously, but specifically as a counter to Catan shards. Pretty hard to kill anyway, but the little Melta X bonus you get on the guns lets you get around their damage halving ability, and the more you can force them to rely on that 4-up save and 5-up feel no pain, the better off you'll be. Generally speaking though, Eradicators can do a disgusting amount of damage on most vehicles with these rerolls, making it difficult to actually do bad with them. Firestorm Detachment also goes quite well with these guys. Pretty cut and dry, Eradicators are an A tier unit any day. Moving on to the Hellblasters, 5 for 115 or 10 for 230. I know, that's a lot of points for a bunch of regular ass dudes, but I'm going to show you why. Hellblasters are all rocking plasma incinerators with assault heavy, allowing you to advance and shoot to keep pressure on a position, and then stay and defend that position once you wipe out whatever is there. As you can see, plasma is incredibly strong with high AP damage, strength, and decent range, allowing a brick of 10 of these fellas to rain havoc down on your unfortunate enemy. Therefore, the chapter ability allows them to roll to shoot on death, needing only a 3-up to do so. This also triggers when they blow themselves up from a failed hazardous check, potentially allowing a few models to shoot twice, or even shoot in your opponent's shooting phase when they die. Pair them with an LT and you can get the ability to shoot and fall back, as well as lethal hits on ranged attacks. Very rare that I go without at least 1 squad of Hellblasters. I've yet to find a unit they can't blast through with ease, and they can bring down lighter vehicles when shooting overcharge. The assault and heavy keyword also gives you a great advantage. They work well in literally any detachment, but probably benefit most from Anvil, Firestorm, or Gladius. These guys are usually a priority target for my opponent, as the people I regularly play with are very familiar with how dangerous they are, and yours might be too. Keep them in cover though, you'll probably be alright. Hellblasters are another S tier unit, and I can't sing their praises enough. Our next unit is the Inceptors, at 120 for 3 and 240 for 6. Their stats are crazy compared to other Marines being super fast and pretty tough. These guys are zooming around the board, aided by their Meteoric Descent ability, which lets you deep strike within 6 inches of enemy models instead of the usual 9. Their guns are solid, having the option to run plasma or assault bolters. Depending on what you want these guys to do, you have more potential wounds with the bolters with their sustained 2, and either way they're all pistols, so you can use them in engagement range as well. You're also getting 3 shots on the bolters instead of 2 with the plasma. Personally, I'd run the bolters. I think 120 is a solid points cost for 3 of these guys, but 240 might be a bit much. They're really not that special. Their kit also super sucks to build, as the flight stands GW gives you for these guys have a needle point of contact with the model, making them incredibly difficult to maintain on the stands without some creative work like this. I hate this fucking kit with a passion, and the unit is pretty mid. I'm biased, and I don't care. These guys get D tier for the prohibitive points cost and shitty kit. We're moving on to the Infernus Squad at 5 for 80 or 10 for 160. Just standard Marines as far as stats go. These guys are a fun little support unit that I've seen to be surprisingly effective on the table. They're using Eyeless bolt carbines, and one model can be equipped with a Haywire mine, which we'll get to in a second. I am going to note their melee weapons here, with their blades being sustained 1, giving them a little more oomph in melee than regular Marines using close combat weapons, along with their -1 AP. Their abilities help them fulfill this support role. We got multi-spectrum array, which lets you mark an enemy unit that was shot by these guys, and allows all your other guys to get a +1 hit on that same target. Haywire mine is a once per battle deal to let you select an enemy within 3 inches and roll a d6, dealing d3 mortals on a 2-up or 2d3 if the enemy is a vehicle. They've also got Scout 6, granting them a 6-inch move before the battle starts and helping you get a little more out of your assault carbines, which also ignore cover. I think these guys are quite good for their points, and that +1 to hit is a great support tool. Haywire mine's alright too, because who doesn't love mortal wounds? All in all, solid support squad. They're going to find their home in the A tier. Here we have the Infernus Squad at 5 for 90 or 10 for 180. Standard Space Marines, all rockin' Pyre Blasters, which are basically beefed up flamers. Their ability is pretty cool too, forcing a battle shock on the unit they just shot at. This can be really handy in hampering units that use reactive stratagems or high leadership threshold units like Cultists or Guard. I'd run these guys with a captain, and they excel in Firestorm. Use the captain's reduced stratagem cost for immolation protocols and give those flamers dev wounds to really fuck someone's day up. Though with the flamers, their range is quite short. I like these guys a lot, and their ability to force battle shock can really put a damper on enemies that use reactive move stratagems and things like that. These boys are going in the A tier. Infiltrators are just that. Infiltrators. Coming in at 5 for 100 or 10 for 200, these dudes are really only good for one thing, and that's deployment denial. They can only have one loadout option, as you can see, and normal Space Marine stats. They can be equipped with a Helix Gauntlet to give them a 6-up fill no pain, and an Infiltrator comms array that allows you to roll to get a CP back after targeting them with a strat, needing a 5-up to do so. The deployment denial comes in with their Omni Scramblers ability, which means that no enemy units can be deployed from reserves within 12 inches of this unit. That is pretty neat, and it can be a counter to deep strike armies like Grey Knights, provided you're smart about your infiltration deployment at the start of the game. It'll keep pesky units like Terminators and Transcendent Catan out of the midfield and force them to deploy somewhere more inconvenient. That said, their lack of loadouts and mediocre war gear aren't doing them any favors. Solid D tier for these guys. Up next, we got Reivers squads coming in at 5 for 80 or 10 for 160. The terror troops of the Space Marines, these guys are sort of like the Eliminators from earlier, but benefit more from being in close range to their enemy. Their default loadout is the special bolt pistol and combat knives, both with precision, and each model can be equipped with a grav chute and a grapnel launcher. Here's where I'm going to take a second and talk shit about war gear in 10th edition. I don't normally bring this up because I don't really have a reason to care, but shit like this makes me scratch my head. Instead of making the grav chute and grapple hook optional war gear, just make them unit abilities. Why would anyone not take these things when there's no other issues and no points cost? War gear should be shit like Perdition's Edge for Black Templars, which improves AP and armor by 1 and 1 extra attack if the right bow is active. That's war gear that makes sense. It has a condition or cost attached to it to get a little more bang for your buck. What the Reivers have is just something they should just have, not something you've got to take time out of your day to equip. This isn't a huge deal, it's just probably one of the more egregious instances of something like this. Anyway, they got Scout 6 so they can get a head start on movement, and 2 abilities that are actually pretty decent. Fearsome Assault forces battle shock on each enemy unit within engagement range, subtracting 1 from the result. Terror Troops reduces enemy OC by 1 within 3 inches, with the exception of monsters and vehicles. The Grav Chute provides deep strike, and the grapple hook allows you to ignore vertical measurements when making any kind of move, which is really handy, especially in more urban maps. These guys do alright against regular Space Marines or enemies with similar stats, because they don't have a ton of lethality or even utility. They probably do alright in Vanguard Spirit Detachment in a hit and run fashion of fighting, but otherwise, you're better off finding another unit. D tier for the Reivers. Moving on to the Scout Squad at 5 for 70 or 10 for 140. These guys, in my correct opinion, are fantastic. All of them come equipped with a bolt gun, pistol, and CCW, but they can all swap them out for shotguns and knives, and the sergeant can take a chainsword instead of a bolt gun. For every 5 models, one dude can either run a sniper rifle, heavy bolter, or missile launcher. They got Infiltrator and Scout 6, giving you the potential for getting an advantageous spot early on in the game, and to maybe score some secondaries or harass enemy troops. And their ability, Guerrilla Tactics, allows them to be pulled off the field and placed into strategic reserves, provided they're within 6 inches away from all enemy models. These guys pair well with the Invictor Tactical Warsuit. As long as you got a Phobos captain leading them, it allows them to make a shooting attack in your opponent's shooting phase to whoever just shot at them, as long as the Phobos unit is within 6 inches of the Warsuit, and is an eligible target. Like I said, Scouts are pretty decent units to get yourself an early lead and to take pot shots with at enemy squads or light vehicles. They're not too special outside of that, but due to how valuable they can be to scoring early points, I'm going to put them in C tier. Sternguard Vets are a slept-on unit, I think. At 5 for 100 and 10 for 200, Sternguards are regular Marines that provide some pretty nifty shooting. All are equipped with the Sternguard Bolt Rifle, which is a bolter with a lot of keywords, and for every 5 models, one can either run a heavy bolter or pyre cannon depending on your preference. Me, I prefer the heavy bolter. Any of them can swap out their guns for combi weapons, though this significantly reduces your volume of fire. The Sergeant can have his bulk gun replaced with several different options, as you can see here. Their ability Sternguard Focus lets you re-roll the wound roll against Oath of Moment targets, making these guys pretty damn lethal against the right foe. Pair them with an LT to get lethal hits on ranged attacks, and these guys can take up a covered position and wear down enemy infantry units very efficiently. They tend to work well across most detachments, so I'm going to put them in the A tier. Remember those jump pack Marines from earlier? We got more of those, but with bigger guns. These guys are the Suppressor Squad, and they can be ran with 3 models for 75 points. They got standard stats with the exception of a 12-inch movement. They only got 1 loadout, and it's pretty nice. You can never go wrong with autocannons, all my guard players in the crowd will know that. They have deep strike and suppression fire ability, which lets you choose a unit that was hit by their attacks, and until your next turn, the enemy unit takes a -1 to hit. I don't see these guys very often, and because they're on these dumbass flight stands, I'll never see them on my own shelf. But they're pretty good for points in my opinion. They have a nice little support ability, crazy movement, and enough firepower to bring down everything up to light vehicles with sustained fire, like shooting an oath target. Easy peasy, B tier unit. We're in the home stretch, I promise. Just a few more to go. Terminator Assault Squad's coming in at 5 for 180 and 10 for 360. That's a whole lot of points, but you'll come to understand why. These guys have that juicy Terminator stat block. They move a little slower, but are a little tougher, with way better saves and more wounds. For these guys, you can run them with either Thunder Hammers with Dev Wounds and Shields, or Twin Lightning Claws with the Twin Linked Wound rerolls. They've got the Teleport Homer ability, allowing them to be set up in rapid ingress for free, and within 3 inches horizontally from the token, and 9 inches from enemy models. Terminator Assault is also nice, as it forces Battle Shock on the target of your charge. These fellas excel in melee heavy detachments like Righteous Crusaders. You can't really go wrong with either loadout option. You can either get more attacks with the Claws for dealing with weaker bricks, or Dev Wounds on the Thunder Hammers to smash through any pesky, invulnerable, or better vehicle saves. Pair these guys with a Templar Vow or something like that, and they're downright scary. Incredible melee unit, but high on points. Better be sure before you decide to take them in your list. We're going to put them in the A tier. Moving on to regular Terminators at 5 for 170 or 10 for 340. Again, super chunky on points, but with that Terminator stat block and lethality, it makes sense. These guys have more loadout options here, with everyone running a Storm Bolter and Power Fist by default. You got options to replace one of these with a Missile Launcher and Storm Bolter, Assault Cannon, or Heavy Flamer. For the Sergeant, you can give him a Power Weapon instead of the Fist. They've got the same Teleporter Homer ability as the last guys, but also Fury of the First. This allows you to add 1 to your hit roll when attacking an Oath of Moment target. I very much enjoy Terminators, but I usually only run them in 5-man squads. They aren't as good as my Scarab Occult Terminators for Thousand Suns, but they get the job done. Storm Bolters are great at chewing up low toughness infantry, especially at half range with the Rapid Fire 1. The Missile Launcher is great for some AT, and their Power Fists are just fantastic all around. They've got decent melee and range, and there's not a lot bad to say about them besides that points cost if you want to use more than 5. Other than that, great unit, another one for the A tier. Lastly, we got Vanguard Vets with jump packs at 5 for 110 or 10 for 220. Standard stats minus that 12-inch move. They got an impressive array of gear to choose from depending on your playstyle, and the ability to swap the bolt pistol default out for any of these options. For melee, you got Vanguard Veteran weapons, which are pretty alright. They have Deep Strike, and their Vanguard Assault gives them lethals in melee after charging. My recommendation is run these guys with Inferno pistols for some stupid good damage potential, but mostly for fun, and a jump pack chaplain to lead them so they get a +1 to wound, and the chance to roll for mortals before they swing. These guys tear my ass up when they're used against me, and they're a great melee and short range unit when paired with the right detachment rules and leader. They're a menace on the board, and they belong in the coveted S tier. That's it for this one, y'all. I know, that's a long ass list of dudes. But Space Marines are famous for their variety of units and the amount of cool shit they all do. Regardless of who you pick, it's easy to create the perfect Space Marine list that's right for you. What do you think about this tier list? Let me know in the comments, and leave your own tier list down there as well. Drop a like if you like it, a subscribe if you really liked it, and don't forget to check the community tab for shit posts and shenanigans. I'll see y'all in the next one.